How did you get started in like martial arts, mixed martial arts, fighting, athletics, any of that stuff? How did you get started in this, sort of this path where that's led you here?
Yeah, well, I started doing martial arts when I was a kid. I was like 4 years old. I did Kempo karate, and I was like in the gi doing my thing. And
Yeah,
so I started doing that for a little bit, and my entire family was into martial arts, and I was a big Bruce Lee fan, obviously, growing up. Then I kind of transitioned into playing more like sport teams, more team sport activities like football, basketball, baseball, and I really took a liking to football. So I started doing that. I played that all the way up into college, got my degree there, playing football. People say, "What did I study in college?" And I was like, basically, I studied football. I mean, really, like the side hustle was getting to learn more about exercise science,
yeah.
you know. But yeah, I mean, and then after that, I was kind of like, man, I need to compete. I need to do something. And I was actually boxing. I was doing amateur boxing on the off season, and I made an alias name because the NCAA wouldn't allow us to do that. So
Really?
like, I think my name was like Matt Jansen or some crazy stuff like that, or I don't know, something like that. And I was like fighting on the weekends, and we were doing these tournaments, and I was doing really well. I had a good base of striking ability just from years of doing that, and then also just watching like Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson and all those guys. And so I went in there and started boxing. I was like, man, I really like boxing. So after football, I was trying to find a gym and I'm originally from South Florida, Fort Lauderdale area. And my parents actually moved up to Port St. Lucie. Now, Port St. Lucie is like population. At this point, it was like there was nobody there. Let's just put it like that. It was nothing around. So I was like, damn, I need to do something. And I was doing personal training on the side. So I looked up the gym, and the first gym that I found was Buddy McGurk's gym up in Vero Beach, which is about 45 minutes away. So I was like, man, I know me. I'm going to want to train twice a day, almost 3 times a day. And it's like, that's a kind of a far drive for me to do that. And I didn't have any money at that point. So it was a little bit difficult. But then I found that there was an American Top Team affiliate school up in Port St. Lucie. And that affiliate school was owned by Dean Thomas. And
Mm-hmm.
Dean Thomas, you guys know who Dean
Oh
is.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Dean was my first coach.
Oh really?
So I literally ran up on him when he was opening up the door and was like, hey man, I want to fight. And he's like, all right, kid, whatever. So I was like, he's like another kid want to do something, want to fight or whatever. And I was really rough around the edges, like I grew up in a bad neighborhood down south, and there was a lot like this hood white boy trying to tell me he wants to fight.
Yeah.
So he's like, come in, try a class, and I did the class, and then I remember I didn't want to do jujitsu. I was like, I really don't feel like rolling around with dudes. Like
Yeah.
I'm good. Like, but at the end, then I started really realizing like this is actually a true art. Like this is actually fun, and it's almost like a chess match.
Mm.
So I started really getting into it. And then I took my first amateur fight, did very well my first year as an amateur. And then it only took I did 4 amateur fights, and I did well in all of them. So Dean was like, all right, let's go pro. And my first pro fight was against a guy named Kurt Hollabaugh, who was like a pretty well-known guy in Louisiana.
Yeah.
And it was funny because Dustin actually cross-trained with him. So it was like kind of goes full circle here with Dustin Poirier.
What year is
And
this? Your first pro fight? What year is this?
2010, 2011.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was back then, and the guy actually was the kid that I fought. I was the main event there too as well. This was in, I want to say, I forgot where it was. It was in Louisiana though. But main event, the guy's really good. He's 12-0 as an amateur. He fought in the UFC a couple times.
Yeah. I know the name.
Yeah. And but I mean, it was really good. I mean, like I went out there, we were striking pretty hard, and I didn't know that he was a brown belt in jiu-jitsu at the time. And me, again, still very green in jiu-jitsu, like really green. I just basically used to hold people down and try to just catch wrestle as much as I possibly could.
Mm.
So, needless to say, with my first pro fight, ended up like throwing the overhand left and taking him down in the middle of the cage. And I remember taking him down, and I'm like, oh shit, like I'm not feeling too good. He kept pulling me, in the top of my head, and I'm like, wait a minute. Oh yeah, we can do this now. This hurts. This doesn't feel good. So I was like this, boom, and put my hands out like this, and he just swung over and caught the armbar, and I had to tap. I didn't tap. I just screamed out the F word, and they were like, oh, that's
it.
That was my thing there, and then after that, got it together a little bit there. But the problem there also was that I was also building my business too as a coach, and I opened up my own facility at 22 years old. So I'm like a year into my pro career, and there was a lot of outside things going on. My parents were getting my mom had lupus, my dad was in a wheelchair, so there was a lot of things that I had to take care of. So I was really focused on building the business and really wasn't training a whole lot. And focus wasn't there. And that's when you end up, when focus is not in the right direction, things may happen. It was either I was going to let my business go to hell, or I was going to let my professional career kind of go down the drains. And actually, I started to pick it up and find a way to coordinate it and schedule it and have some help. I grew my gym business from 800 square foot facility with like 12 people to up to 11,000 square feet in 6 months. And then we had over 300 members. I had a full cage in there. There was a lot of things in there that I'm proud of from a business standpoint. But again, there's a lot of things that I could have did from my professional career to enhance my abilities, and it didn't really go hand in hand when you have a business like that 100% in. So after that, I'm probably about 25. I'm making my way back. I got some help now, so I'm doing well. Just won my last fight, and then I'm going into my next fight. And remember now, I played football since I was 8 years old, so accumulation of head trauma has been prevalent. So, like, for me, I know I've had about at least 8 concussions that I can remember, and bad ones too, not knowing where I was and having headaches for days and things like that, nausea, everything else. I was probably 2 weeks out from my last fight, and I was like 26 years old at this point. And one of my training partners, we're just drilling. It was a freak accident, and he came up and basically did like a spinning back kick. And we weren't sparring hard. It was just a drill session, and he came down hard, like whipped it down across the back of my head, and it rocked me, and I was kind of out on my feet. I knew I was concussed a little bit there, but the problem was I didn't recover as well as I usually do, and it took about 4 days for me to be like, all right, I gotta call out of this fight, which I didn't want to, because the fight was actually a really good fight for me. Stylistically, I was gonna do really well, but I went to the neurologist and he checked me out and he was like, man, listen, you're accumulating those beta amyloid plaques that are going to cause issues down the line if you don't stop getting repeated head trauma. And basically, at the end of the day, he was like, if you don't stop by the time you're 50, you're probably gonna develop Alzheimer's. And I was like, well, that sucks.
Yeah.
So at this point, my son was just born. The business was going really well. I was trying to go back to get my grad degree. And I remember going to school now and being like, man, I don't even remember what they just said. And usually I have a great memory. But now it was like I was foggy. Like memory is, I have to read over and over again now, different subjects. So it's very frustrating when, like, it was easy to pick up things before, and now it takes a little bit longer. And I don't know if old age becomes an issue too as well. I mean, but for me, I was like, there's something here. So now I'm getting it all together. I'm making sure that I'm taking my omega-3s. I'm doing collagen. I'm doing things that are going to help brain functionality in a way from a supplementation standpoint, and then also just making sure that I'm constantly reading and constantly not stressing my mind, but,
giving it a workout.
Yeah. Like making it work, and even if that has to do with like games, chess games and, things like that, that's important for me, because at the end of the day, I don't want to lose what I have right now, and I want to keep progressing. So but that's been it. And I decided to, I called Dean actually, and I was like, man, what do you think? And he was like, man, if it was like your knee or, your back or something like that or anything, but it's your brain, you can't really mess with that.
Right. Yeah.
So it took me a while still, and I was, because I put a lot of time and effort into this thing, and finally decided to call it quits and just basically retire from it. And for a minute, for about a year, I was just doing powerlifting and I was doing strongman. I even did some bodybuilding. I just wanted to get away from the entire sport, didn't want to have anything to do with it. And then finally I was like, man, I need to be back in it. So I called Dean up and I go, man, you got anybody down there? Because this is when he actually transitioned and he sold his gym up in Port St. Lucie and now was one of the head coaches down at Coconut Creek. So it all comes around full circle. And I called him up. I go, man, do you have anybody that you want me to work with down there? Because I know you're down there full time. I don't have really much to do now because I'm just coaching. And he was like, you actually may be in luck because the old S&C coach is actually leaving. Can you get your resume together? Mm-hmm. So I got it together, ran down there, 90-minute drive down there, and then my first day, I remember I coached Dustin Poirier, Tisha Torres, King Molawal, and Hector Lombard. That was my group that I had to train. So it was cool. Yeah. But the great thing about it also, though, is that I've been down there a bunch of times. I trained down there a bunch of times. But they didn't know me as a coach. They knew me as the fighter. So now I had to transition that way into, being more of the authoritative type instead of being a buddy-buddy type, But that's where I've been for the past 4 years now.